everybody out there in Bible study land.
This is
Jody.
And that is Pastor
Pastor
Jeff. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. This is what we call cold open.
And when it's on a cold day.
Oh,
I'm in my
man.
casual cold weather gear.
Look at us.
Doing my best Jody Pear impersonation.
But boy, we've got a lot of announcements today. These are your Bible study announcements.
Jody, it's that time of year. We got a lot of things happening.
Yes, we do. This Tuesday, the 18th, we have the Brewer WOM Missions Auction.
Yeah, they got all sorts of auction items that you can bid on, with all of the proceeds going to fund and support missions. Great event. You want to be a part of it.
Auction, huh?
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. I've been there. I've been to it before. It's
Yeah?
pretty good. Yeah.
Did you see something you just had
Oh
to have?
boy, did I! But my mind told me that I should proceed with caution.
But my heart said, go ahead and make the middleman.
And I said, hey, pretty lady, won't you give me a sign? I'll do anything, make your mind on mine. I'll do your bidding and be at your beck and call. Yeah, I've never seen anyone looking so fine. Man, I gotta have her, she's a one of a kind. I'm going once, going twice. I'm sold to the lady in the second row. She's an 8, she's a 9, she's a 10, I know. She got ruby red lips, blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm about to bid my heart goodbye. Hey!
Yeah.
So last week, Jody, we teased the viewing audience that we were going to sing for Singing Men of Texas. But we threw in a curveball and we sang for the Brewer WOM auction. So now we just get to talk about Singing Men of Texas. When's that taking place, Jody?
Thursday the 20th. This Thursday.
Right here in our building. We are hosting the Singing Men of Texas. That takes place at 7 o'clock. Completely free event, but we want to pack the house. This is a great opportunity for you to extend an invitation. Invite somebody to come along with you Thursday, 7 p.m., Singing Men of Texas. You don't want to miss it.
It's going to be great.
Fantastic. We just are here to let you know about Be the Service.
See, everybody's getting involved in the
Darren's here to invite you to Be the Service.
Britt's here.
Absolutely. Be the Service is a ministry of the Hopkins County Christian Alliance. Our church is a part of that. And on November 22nd, the Hopkins County Christian Alliance will feed 750 families a Thanksgiving meal. And you can be in prayer for that event, that it'd be an outreach for the gospel of Jesus. And you could also participate. This year, a box with a turkey and all the fixings is going to cost just under $25. So if you would like to give a $25 donation, that would help fund a box that the Hopkins County Christian Alliance.
Or any amount of money.
Any amount. Yeah, two $10 bills will get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can give anything. So just letting you know. Oh, sorry, Darren. Just letting you know about Be the Service.
Yep.
And if you want to help actually distribute those boxes, see the one and only Jody Turkey Head Pear.
It's a great event. You get to come alongside other church members from the community and get to serve our community by passing out some awesome meals. And if you want to give, I will be in the hub today to collect money.
Awesome. Be the Service.
Right, Britt?
Thanks, Darren.
Didn't mess up Britt's hair. Did you look at that?
No. Jody, it's also that time of year that Upward Basketball is about to kick off.
Yes, that is. So we have students registered, players ready to
Absolutely.
play. Now we need some coaches.
Coaches, maybe you need to be a coach. To help you with that, we got this little video.
No. 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 No.
Dad, what is with you? Okay, come on.
Hey, would you like to sign up to be an Upward coach?
Oh,
Please?
sure. Okay, guys?
Are you my coach?
Yeah, I am.
I'm so glad that you could join us.
Hey, Coach. The kids ready?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Hey, Coach, can you tell us more about Jesus later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good game. Hey, great game, Coach.
Thanks.
Congratulatory donut.
No.
As an Upward Sports coach, you can make an eternal difference in the life of a child. And the only thing you have to say no to is the post-game snack.
Thank you so much for attending the Bible Study Hour.
If you haven't joined us for worship, we would love to see you 11 o'clock in the Worship Center.
And back tonight for evening worship at 6 p.m. Seth Hunt bringing the word.
Bringing it.
Tonight, a couple of quick things before you get out of here. It's time to reserve your seat for Christmas at First. That's December 12th, 13th, 14th, completely free, but you need to get a seat. Head to our website and RSVP today. Also want to say a big thank you to all of you who have sacrificially given to our Harvest Day offering. We have currently brought in $346,000. So we have reached our goal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you still want to give to that effort, you can just designate that gift. We'll still make good use of that money. Thank you so much. See you at 11 or 6 p.m.
Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. Every day with Jesus, I love him more and more. Jesus saves and keeps me, and he's the one I'm living for. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before.
Y'all may have a seat. I'd like to welcome everybody to the radio Bible class here at First Baptist Church, Sulphur Springs. I want to let you know that you're going to, for the next 45 minutes, we're going to have old-fashioned Sunday school. Amen. And we are so glad that you're listening. We hope it will be a blessing to you and to everybody in this room. A ministry that our church provides for the whole country. If you've got a computer, you can catch us on the airwaves, and we're glad that you're listening to us on the radio or watching on TV. We have a great class. We have a place for you. You have time to get in your car and come down and sit with us. We would love to have you every Sunday, and you will get a blessing. We got a great teacher this morning, Brother Matt Harness. He's worked hard all week studying this lesson. We know that he'll give us a good lesson, and we hope it'll be a blessing to you. Y'all join me in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for providing this place for us and for providing the opportunity for us to broadcast this lesson that we're going to have today. Thank you for the wonderful music you give us. God, just thank you for the love you've shown us. There's so many people out there, they have missed so much because all they have to do is just admit that they have lived a wrong life, they've been a sinner, and they'll accept you into their heart as you're the only God and Savior of this world. I ask you to bless everyone in this room and those that are ill, that can't be with us, they have broken hearts, broken homes, that you'll lift them up. Put a Band-Aid on their life and let them walk with you. These things I ask in your name. Amen.
Good morning. What a good group we got here. Matt, they knew you was teaching today, so they all rounded up. Y'all get your hymn books, please, and turn to 301. 301. I am resolved. I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are lower, we've got to learn, my son. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, He is the just one, He hath the words of life. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I am unto Thee. I am resolved, and who will go with me? Come, friends, without delay. Taught by the Bible, led by the Spirit, we'll walk the heavenly way. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to Thee. Well, like we said, we got Matt Harness with us today. And like James Litzler, they bring these surprises to us up here, y'all. And when they wrap them up in these blankets and stuff, and in these T-shirts they pull out on us, it kind of makes me leery. But Matt, thanks for coming.
You're probably thinking that's baby Moses in there, but it's not. Well, good morning. We are in our Bible study today in the book of Deuteronomy. We have a couple more Bible studies in there. And today we are in one of the most challenging chapters in the entire Old Testament, chapter 28. And once you find chapter 28, hold the place and turn back just a couple of chapters to 26. We're going to look at the very beginning today, verses 16 through 19 and 26. I want to welcome everyone on the radio today, TV, or online to our Bible study class. We've been studying through the book of Deuteronomy, and today we come to a lesson titled Covenant Relationships, and you might want to call this Blessings and Cursings. Now, when I say the word cursings, what does that mean in 2025? You know, what does that mean in your mind whenever I talk about cursings? How do we relate to the word curse? Cuss in 2025.
Or a good cousin.
We know what cousins are and cussing is, but what about a curse, right? What if I said, let's use the word, instead of curse, the word COVID? You know what that means? We have people in this room today who are survivors, more than likely, of COVID. And COVID and curses both share a common biblical term, a common Hebrew word. They both mean a contagious disease with a high death rate. In that sense, COVID was a real curse, a modern day curse by biblical standards. You know, Paula's not here today. She is babysitting in Arkansas, and she's having a lot of drama up there, but I'm glad that she's able to help out my daughter and son-in-law while they went to the LSU-Arkansas game. You know, that was supposed to be playing for the boot. You know, Arkansas and Louisiana make a boot. I call it not the boot game, but the toilet bowl game, because this year it wasn't too good for either one of those teams, but that's where they were. Speaking of Paula, most of you know this already, she was an RN, she was a heart nurse, and she's retired from all that. But I remember whenever COVID began, she has a sister who is a geneticist, and she worked at MD Anderson. She was one of the main geneticists at MD Anderson. And I remember Paula and Cindy talking about this thing we were calling COVID. And then I remember Paula start telling me about things that were happening in the hospital and how they had a COVID unit and how Paula was having to make personal protective equipment and things like this. They didn't have enough of it to go around for medical care. And then I remember Paula talking about how serious this virus was and how people were being placed on respirators. And if you got placed on a respirator, you probably wouldn't be coming back. You remember all that, don't you? And some of you probably have loved ones who possibly did not come back from all that. A couple of years after COVID began, Paula and I went to Colorado with my other daughter and their family. And in Colorado, Paula got sick, and there were signs plastered all over the town we were staying in about danger, we're highly infectious right now with COVID. And so Paula kept worrying about, how am I going to get back on the airplane? I think I've got COVID. And she got back on the airplane, and we flew back, and then about the first day back, I got sick, and so I went to the doctor, and my doctor said, well, hey, here in Rockwall, where I live then, you can go over to this station. They have the monoclonal antibodies, and you can get those. And of course, I'm going to be the last person that they deny, the first person they deny a monoclonal antibody, because they've outlawed them in the United States at that point, or said don't use them. Well, during all of this, I was a tennis pro. I had a tennis academy, and I don't think I've ever told you guys that before. I was a tennis pro, and I had a tennis academy that was in partnership with the Sunnyvale Independent School District. We actually were based at their tennis complex. And Sunnyvale is sandwiched right in between Mesquite and Garland on Lake Ray Hubbard. If you're wondering where that is, it's a fairly small municipality. But I lost my tennis academy because of that. They closed it down, and of course, many businesses and venues closed. And I'm saying all this to remind you that when I'm talking about curses today, it's relevant. The plague that's in the biblical uses the word that's similar to plague or COVID. It means word or speech. Now think about that for a minute. What does that suggest? It suggests the theological idea that the pandemic is a direct result of God's spoken word or address. It's an instrument of his judgment that brings about what he intends. You know, Moses believed immensely in the power of God's words. Listening to his voice is a constant theme in Deuteronomy. And whenever Moses talks about listen to the voice of God, it's more than some kind of noisy chatter, but it's about the very substance and power to shape events and reality. Now think about that. Moses tells us that the words of God not only created the universe and the earth and Adam and Eve, but he says God's words have power to change your reality for the good or the bad, for the cursings or the blessings. Now, I don't want to talk all about bad part of COVID. There was a good part for me, and it has to do with golf. So whenever COVID began, you know, they tried to shut down everything. They even tried to shut down golf courses. And I guess the people who were in charge played golf, and they didn't let them shut everything down. But they made some really weird rules on the golf course. And one of them was you could not touch the pin where the hole is. And then somebody had a great idea that we're not going to let you put your hand down in the cup either, so they put these foam barriers around the hole. And the idea was if you hit a golf ball and it hit the foam, it counts as going in the hole. So one day, my son-in-law, who's from Arkansas and who's driving back from the LSU game right now, I was on the golf course in Royce City, Stone River Golf Course there, on hole number 3, and I had never made a hole-in-one in my life. And I hit a golf ball, and he's watching, it's just he and I, and that golf ball hits that foam thing. And I said, Hunter, that is a COVID hole-in-one. He said, no, it's not. He denied me a COVID hole-in-one. Anyhow, they had these plaques you could buy that were about COVID hole-in-ones and all that, but That was my positive memory of COVID. But I want us to think about where we are this morning in Deuteronomy, because Moses is preparing the Israelites for entering into the land of promise. And he's going to prepare them by rehearsing. And that's a key word I want you to remember this morning. Rehearsing the blessings and cursings of the covenant. Now, stay with me for a minute here. We're going to be in the deep end of the pool if I'm not real careful here, because this is the deep end of the pool. I'm going to try to keep us in the 3 to 5 foot range. Whenever we're talking about Deuteronomy, there's two things at play here. There is what we call the laws of Moses, all 613 of them. And then there's this thing that we call the covenant of Moses. And in Exodus, it's actually called the book of the covenant. But whenever we're talking about these two subjects, the laws and the covenant, Moses fastens them together. He bolts them together so that you can't tell them apart. They're indistinguishable. And this part today about the blessings and the cursings are going to be fulfilled eventually in Joshua chapter 8, at the end of it. And it's interesting that Joshua, he says that Moses in this, not Moses, but the people in Joshua chapter 8, Joshua is the leader, not Moses is dead by now, whenever Joshua happens. But Joshua reads, he says, all the laws of Moses. I'm assuming all 613 of them. And then he says, I also read the cursings and the blessings. That makes it sound like it was something separate in his mind. But I want to begin today by going back just a little bit to chapter 26, because there's 4 verses at the end of chapter 26 that are really critical to help us get a running start before we get into Deuteronomy 27 and 28 and 29 and even chapter 30. These 4 verses punch a lot heavier than their weight class. They're powerful. There's only 4 of them. They're not very long. And I want to read these 4 verses as we begin today in Deuteronomy 26, beginning in verse 16. This day the Lord your God commands you to observe these statutes and judgments. Therefore, you shall be careful to observe them with all your heart and with all your soul. Today you have proclaimed the Lord to be your God, and that you will walk in his ways and keep his statutes, his commandments and his judgments, that you will obey his voice. Also today, the Lord has proclaimed you to be his special people. I'd underline that word, special people. Just as he promised you, that you should keep all his commandments. How many commandments are there? 613. That he will set you high above all the nations which he has made, in praise, in name, and in honor, that you may be a holy people to the Lord your God, just as he has spoken. Now, to help you understand what's happening here, think about these 4 verses as a hinge, a transition point. Moses has just talked to us in chapters 5 through 25 about many different laws. He talked about divorce. He talked about involuntary manslaughter. Remember what that was about, the cities of refuge? He talked about eating laws, dietary codes. He talked about many random laws that seemingly don't fit with hardly anything. Some of the laws just mean, hey, if you're an Israelite, you're going to be different. You can't eat a certain kind of food. But these particular verses we just read are the hinge between what Moses describes as the laws and the curses and the blessings. So here's the hinge. Go this way, we have the laws. We go this way, we have the curses and the blessings. but they're one thing. They're not two things, they're one. And Moses is going to tell us, just like he's already told us in verse 16, that you've got to use all your soul if you're going to be obedient. Now, remember what Moses said about the law? He said, I can summarize the law for you in 10 points. You know what those 10 points are, right? The 10 Commandments. That's the summary of the law. So 613 equals 10. And then Moses said, I can summarize the 10 in one. And what was the one commandment that Moses said? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Now think about this. He takes 613, he makes them 10, and then he makes them 1. Now what did Jesus do? Jesus took 10 commandments that had been turned into 1, and how many commandments did he make out of 1? He made 2. He made 2. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart. And then he said, love your neighbor as yourself. So 613, look at our biblical math here. 613 equals 10, 10 equals 2, 2 equals 1, and then Jesus says 1 equals 2. That's some pretty good math. So Jesus said, not only do you have to love God, but you've got to be a salty neighbor. You've got to be a salty neighbor. And then in verse 17 to 26, Moses talks about salvation, sanctification. He kind of blends them together, but he says if you walk, keep, and listen the words of God, God will declare you righteous. That's very important now. It's not that he's going to make them righteous, he's declaring them righteous. And that's a very important point I want to emphasize here, because you may be stressed out about how am I going to be righteous by obeying all this. And the reality is, it's always been one way of salvation. God declares us righteous because we believe in him. That's what happened to Abraham in chapter 15 of Genesis, verse 6. And then God says, these people are special people. And he uses some very dramatic language. He says in verse 19, I'm going to set you high above all the nations in praise and name and honor. Now in Exodus, he talks about also how special the people are. They're my special treasure. They're a kingdom of priests. They're a holy nation. You know, a lot of people think that God calls us to a code of conduct here. And really what he calls us to is himself. And I think that's such a critical part of understanding this, that if we don't understand that God is not calling you to a code of conduct, it's good if you have a good code of conduct. I mean, don't steal from people and don't lie to people. But what he's really doing is he's calling us to what? Be holy. Now, we're going to get to this in a few minutes. But whenever God says be holy, he gives that in a way, it's a passive imperative in the Hebrew. It means you can't do it yourself, so how do you obey that? What does it mean to be commanded to do something you cannot do? How do you do that? All you can do is like, I heard this guy pray one time. He said, Lord, here I am. Let it be done unto me. And that was a man a long time ago who lived in China and who was persecuted for his faith. So Moses is clearly pro-obedience. Pro-obedience. You know, whenever I talk about this, I think some people probably struggle with this because of parenting issues. You may have had a parent who was oppressive or abusive to you, verbally, physically, I don't know. I know it's not that uncommon. And whenever that happens, I've discovered that a lot of times a man or a woman, as they age in life and they grew up in that kind of a family with an abusive parent, possibly two abusive parents or possibly just one, that they tend to stay away from the Lord. They may be a believer, but they do not ever become a belonger. And I think what Moses is saying here to us today is that God uses discipline to draw us to Him if we are willing. And I don't know how a person gets past that if you've had a bad childhood, a difficult parent, but all I can tell you is that the Lord is our Father. It doesn't mean that He's more than a man. It means that He cares for us. He plans for us. He provides for us. And that's the kind of parent that we all strive to be. Another key word in these 4 verses is the word today. Today. You know, Moses' very existence depends on the present moment. He's not thinking about tomorrow. He's not thinking a whole lot about the past. He's thinking about today. And remember whenever Moses appeared before Pharaoh, what Pharaoh told Moses? You know, they were having a plague of frogs. And Moses said, hey, Pharaoh, I can terminate this. I'll ask the Lord to terminate this plague. And Pharaoh said, tomorrow you can do that. And you know what tomorrow is a sign of? It's a sign of being hard-hearted, hardened. If the Lord tells you to do something and you start saying, I'm going to think about that, I might do it in a few days or sometime in the future, that's a sign that you may have a hard heart. And so Moses tells us that God's going to exalt Israel. He's going to give it a high status. And think into the New Testament about where you hear that term. Jesus is going to be exalted high above every name, and that every knee will bow and worship Him as the Lord of Lords. So in the last verse here in chapter 26, verse 19, we have what I call the missing link. The missing link. And what does this mean? It means that God is going to use Israel collectively between Himself and this world we live in. It's not because they were superior racially or ethnically, but it means that they were special because they had been chosen by God through the fathers, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then through the children of Israel in captivity in Egypt through Moses, to be His witness in this world. And here's why it's the missing link. We think about missions today as traveling somewhere. You go on mission, right? Whenever God called Israel into being, He said that you're going to be my missionary, but the people and the nations are coming to you. You know, we've got a world that's being overrun in many Western countries with immigrants. Have you ever thought why? Probably because we didn't go to them. God's sending them to us. Just an idea to think about. So we come to chapter 28, and thanks to Pat today, Pat McClung, for my object lesson. She brought her kneading bowl that she bakes, that she forms her bread in, and out of this she has the dough that becomes a loaf of bread, and then she has a loaf that she's made in this. I'll try to undo it for you here real quickly while I'm not disappearing off the camera too much. But she has a beautiful loaf of bread that she's made in this. And this relates, if you've read your lesson today, you know how this relates to our lesson. Because one of the blessings that Moses is going to describe in 28:5 is the basket and the kneading bowl. And he's going to talk about how the kneading bowl God blesses. And you know what the kneading bowl makes? bread. It forms bread. That looks pretty good to me. That's beautiful. And that is, in Moses' vocabulary, a blessing. So let's look at verses 28, 1 through 5. Now it shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all his commandments which I command you today, that the Lord your God will set you high above all nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, because you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Now there's that old country boys and city boys dilemma that's always existed, right? Have you ever thought of yourself as a country girl or a city guy? I remember growing up, because I grew up in northern Arkansas where it was real country, and then I spent quite a bit of time in North Little Rock, Arkansas, which wasn't a real big city, but it was enough that I kind of was aware of the difference between city people and country people, but that's a different subject. Some of y'all identify with that. Verse 4, blessed shall be the fruit of your body, the produce of your ground, and the increase of your herds, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flocks. And here's our special verse, thanks to Pat today. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Now, if anybody can answer this, you will win a PhD in Old Testament today, my online Bible class. Where has Moses just recently talked about the kneading bowl? Where was that? Does anybody remember that? Remember that plague that I talked about of frogs? In Exodus chapter 8, what does Moses say about the frogs in Egypt? They got in to the Egyptians' houses, the palaces, everywhere. They got into their ovens. And then Moses slips this in on us in chapter 8 of Exodus. He said, the frogs were even in their kneading bowls. And that's Moses' way of saying that the frogs defiled the land. Now he's reversing that here by saying that God's going to bless your kneading bowl. And I want to focus not on all these blessings, but on this one blessing today, because I think this blessing is unique and exceptional. You know where this takes place? In the kitchen. Where is the kitchen located? It's in the home. And who typically runs most kitchens? Now, I know there may be a man in here today who is a chef and who cooks, because I recognize that. But ordinarily, it's the wife, it's the women who control the kitchen. And I think Moses is really being very clever here by highlighting this kneading bowl and the blessing associated with it by kind of elevating womanhood right here. It's very interesting. You know, cooking is a great art, and it is an art. It's something that usually you have to learn how to do. You just don't wake up and become a good cook or a chef, right? You know, way back in the day, humans, they took elements of the earth, and they took water, and they took fire, and this chemistry was the beginning of human culture, right? And so Moses is saying that many blessings begin in the kitchen. And God exalts the kitchen because it's a part of the home. It's a part of a husband and wife's life. It's a part of a family's life. And if your grandkids are like my grandkids, they go through every drawer, open the refrigerator 1,000 times, looking for anything to eat, and they will eat anything. And they enjoy that, right? They find snacks, and they have to have snacks. But you know, I think that Moses is saying here that the kneading bowl, though, this is a wooden kneading bowl. And if you use this, let's say every other day, just think about what accumulates on this kneading bowl. A little bit of every loaf does. It accumulates on there. And I think that's what Moses is saying to the people who are hearing this in his age. They knew what this was, just like the Egyptians did. And this is where their life comes from. This is where their accumulated blessings come from. The more it's used, the better it becomes. And so Moses is saying that the blessings of God are on the kitchen, upon the kneading bowl, upon the family, upon the home. And if you obey and listen to his voice and do what he says and walk with him, you'll be blessed. You know, in this same chapter, Moses is not done with the kneading bowl. Look at verse 17. What does Moses say in verse 17 about this exact same kneading bowl? He says that God is going to curse it if you don't walk with me, listen to my voice, and obey my commandments. Now, I may be wrong about this, but I'm going to suggest to you something here about 28:17. Moses reverses what we just read at the very beginning of this chapter. And he doesn't just reverse the blessings into a curse, but he actually goes, when he talks about the curse on the kneading bowl, he goes into pandemic mode. You're going to need your personal protective equipment at this point. You're going to need to play golf on a golf course where you can't touch the flagpole. You're going to see hospitals full of people who are ill because God is reversing his blessings and they are becoming curses and they are going viral. You know, just as the word bless means to increase, to flourish, it means to live according to God's order. The word curse means that you're estranged from God's created order, that you're without protection. And there's several Hebrew words for curse that Moses uses, but in this chapter, one of the main words he uses, it means diminished, decrease. Now, you remember, Balaam? I didn't think I'd really enjoy Balaam too much in this whole thing, but it kind of stuck to me. You know, and Balaam wanted to curse Israel so bad, he saw all that money that they were promising him if he would just put a curse on Israel, and he tried, and every time he tried to curse Israel, God made him bless Israel. And you know, Moses, he likes to talk about curses and blessing too. It's just, you know, his personality is coming through in Deuteronomy 28 here. And he's telling us one more time that if anyone curses God's people, they're guaranteeing divine retribution upon any nation or individual who opposes God's word and redemptive plan. Now, in our last few minutes here this morning, I'm kind of jumping around in this chapter a little bit because I want to tie this all together with verse 47. You know, Moses has made a cursing sandwich here, and you know, there's in chapter 27 there's a series of curses, and then in 28 there's a series of curses, and then in the middle, the meat of this is the blessings. But you wouldn't really zero in on this unless you knew that he gives you the why in verse 47. Why is Moses making this sandwich with curses on the bread part and the meat, the blessing? But why is he doing that? Why is he rehearsing these verses, these curses and blessings, with the second generation before they go into the land of promise? Here's the answer. Verse 47 and 28. Because the people did not serve the Lord with joy and gladness, despite having an abundance of everything. They would face the curses of serving their enemies who would be sent by the Lord. You know, it's amazing, from our simple failures to heed joy. We all want to be happy. We all want joy. But a simple failure to follow the Lord comes deprivation or leanness or diminished status. And the thing about deprivation in this chapter, without getting real in the deep end of the pool, is that deprivation spreads virally like COVID. And so you can go from skinny to real skinny to dead. You know, joy must be related to holiness. The more you really study the Old Testament, it has to be. Holiness is the very essence of God's being. God's not like us, but he wants us to be like him. You know, there's places in the Old Testament where the people say that, hey, God, you're like us. And God reminds them in a couple of places, I'm not like you. But you know, happiness in this life is challenging. I look at my own life. I've lived since I've been 15 years old with the remnants of experimental chemotherapy and radiation from terminal Hodgkin's disease. And, you know, I have a lot of after effects from all that still, that I'm actively go to Baylor Heart Valve Center to have that team of doctors. I'm a part of the study there, that they stay on top of it, and I have a lot of challenges probably in my very near future coming. But I can dwell on that and think about my diminished health and not be happy and not have joy and to be sad about it and to be anxious about it. Or I can do what verse 47 says. I can realize that God's given me an abundance of everything. Now think about this. These folks that are reading this, they're living in tents in the desert. They don't have anything. They have a kneading bowl. They probably don't have very much other than a kneading bowl, to be honest with you. They have probably a couple of ceramic pots, but they're hauling everything around in the wilderness. And God says, because you were not thankful, these curses will come upon you. You know, I'm glad that we can follow the first version of the blessing. That God says he's going to bless your kneading bowl and you're going to have this fresh bread. Now, I like to think about that fresh bread for just a second here. This fresh, homemade loaf of bread reminds us how blessed we are. You know, we can go down to Brookshire's right now and buy all the loaves of bread we want. We don't even think about it. It's like we take it for granted. Everybody takes it for granted. But in this day, when they didn't have a Brookshire's, they had to knead it. They had to form it. They had to make it. And every time that bread was made, they should have thought, what a blessing this is. What a blessing this is. And when we look at these curses and blessings and this sandwich that Moses made, instead of focusing on disease and disaster and deportation, like our text talks about, that always ends in death, we need to take Moses' advice and choose life. Choose life. Choose the fresh loaf of bread. Choose the kneading bowl. Don't choose the death that came to the people in Egypt. I always enjoy Pastor Jeff reading his, he's got a long list of sins that Jesus died for, and I kind of listen to those thinking about how many of those do I check off, and I check off quite a few of them, because I think that whenever I was originally diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, I was entering into the realm of Deuteronomy 28. because of discipline. And I think that God saved me, and He's given me a very rich life, an abundant life. But I do think that we need to warn people that are close to us sometimes that maybe the life they're living is not the kind of life that's going to be a blessing. And God blesses us not so that we can have an abundance, but so that we can be a blessing to someone else. And then there are people in life, that they just ignore. And then, unfortunately, they don't get to smell the fresh bread. They leave us sometimes prematurely. So today, my word to you is choose life. Smell the fresh bread. And I don't know if Pat's going to have any of this available or not. But man, it sure looks good. But thank you for serving as our Bible study prop today, okay? Thank you.
Well, since you're batching at home and your wife's